No, a little bit, but he's in the same age group.
Okay.
2012 with Hags' kids.
So what's that story? Go ahead and break it off for us.
Well, back in the day when we went up to recruit, usually it was around Thanksgiving, which was not my favorite time to leave the family, but one of my old assistants was with me, and we had to cover about 5 or 6 fields, and none of them were that close together. It was in Manassas, I think. And so my assistant was from that area, and so he had some friends that he visited with the night before. And the next morning we got up from the hotel and went to the fields. I says, hey, look, you take this field, and then I'll be back in about an hour. I'm going to go to the other field and check out some kids. So I came back, and he was sitting in his chair on the sideline there, sound asleep. I don't know. He might have been snoring, too. His mouth was wide open. He was leaned back. So I said, hey, man, how'd you like those kids? And he, of course, shakes alive there. And he says, oh, yeah, they're pretty good. I said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take a look at them, too, before we make any decisions here.
Yeah. Well, what comes from that, though? Okay, so was that his first time recruiting? Like, have you already tested him before to be a good evaluator of talent? And did he prove it before? And you're like, all right, let me give him the benefit of the doubt, or was this one of his earlier?
This was one of his first times with me recruiting. And it showed that even though you're a great player, it doesn't mean you're a great recruiter.
Yeah, you recruited him to play in college, right? I think I know.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. So you knew him well.
He was a great player and even became a professional player. So
yeah.
And now he's a good coach.
Well, all the locals have now figured out who it is.
Yeah, I'll make sure to give him a heads up.
I actually have a picture. Me and Steve went up to go watch. This is when we were recruiting Hewlett. So we're up there in Fredericksburg recruiting Hewlett, and we're watching the game. And Noah was with us. And at halftime, I look over, and he's like, "I'm going to take a quick nap." That's a really good idea.
Right.
So I've seen him sleep in his office chair many a time. You know, like, I just need 10 minutes. You know, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I have to lay down. So I'm now laying down on the ground, on the grass right next to Steve. And Steve's on out, and I pass out. And Noah takes a picture 5 minutes into the second half, and we're still laying there, like, still asleep. But we woke up quickly, and we landed the kids, so it was good. That was the game that they lost like 6-1, and
right.
PK or something.
It was actually Hewlett's game, right?
It was Hewlett's game, yeah.
Yeah.
Noah, I guess he gets a reminder on his social media of that picture, so he sends it to me once a year.
Right.
I'll have to find it and put it on the podcast.
Yeah, I feel like we should post that. I mean, yeah, for sure.
Well, those days are long, you know. I mean, how many times we gone to Raleigh or one of these big events? And I mean, Steve, I do this now all the time. I tell the guys, like, I got to go. You know, Steve did this to me a few times, like, hey, I need to take this time slot off. And he'll just go to his car and take a power nap, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, and come back. And
yeah.
So I originally I was like, man, we got to recruit. But tell you what, when I didn't take those naps, and the rest of the day was pretty shot. I'd just be angry, you know, like, I don't want to recruit angry. And so I did it in Raleigh this past year. It was pretty cold. And I went back, and I was wearing my heavy coat, and I was bundled up nice. I actually opened up the tailgate of my truck, and I've got just the flat cap on it. And I laid down on some cardboard in there, and I closed it up. That was a solid hour, man. I got a phone call to wake me up to make sure I made the next game. So it was very, very productive recruiting that day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, I think that when I write my book about my experiences coaching and the chapter on recruiting and the importance of being a good recruiter, you know, for your program, that will be the first page. And that'll be that picture of Cheese and me sleeping on the sideline.
Right.
And, you know, we're trying to teach young coaches, you know, what they should be doing when they're recruiting.
Right.
And so I think that would be a good start to a chapter.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, when the oxygen masks come out of the ceiling, you put it on your face first. You got to take care of yourselves before you
That's
can
right.
be a good recruiter.
That's right.
You don't want me to watch it while I'm tired and angry. Okay, just let me get my power nap in. Usually they feed us really well at these events, so you get a nice little snack, and
Right.
I'm in a good place. Cup of coffee, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, go ahead.
you could talk about how recruiting has changed. So when I got to William and Mary in 1990, Albert, turned me loose, and you show up at the field. There are no tents. There's a table there that gives you information, and I send my assistant, and he goes to Loudon and eats lobster rolls. I got a pack of crackers and a cup of coffee, which was just awful.
Right.
And there were about 10 fields at this one place. That was the only place where all the fields were together. Now you could go recruiting. There's a big tent, and at the fields, there are cameras. So you don't even have to leave the tent. And you can sit in there. They have heaters and everything, and you could eat all day. It's like watching a game in your living room.
Right.
And you just look at the different TVs, and then you go out every once in a while just so people know that you're there. So the recruiting has changed a little bit. And of course, the fields are all in nice complexes now, usually. And they have nice booklets and all the information. And back then, they handed you a piece of paper with all the people that wrote down your school that were interested. So when I worked for William and Mary, I had a couple of full pages. And then I took the job at CNU, and I said, okay, well, I'm here at the table to pick up my paper with all the names and everything. And there were 3 names on the piece of paper. And I says, wow, this is going to be a little different than recruiting for William and Mary. I will say it got better as years went on, with Christopher Newport, but recruiting has changed a lot.
I was going to say you did a really good job, because I'm sure by the end of it, your page was quite full at that point. Not that there were pages anymore by the time you were done, but
no, it was still really difficult, because then I had to do everything online. I wanted the paper, because technology had passed me by.
Right. Yeah. So, Cheese, you want to introduce your old boss? And
Yeah.
all right.
Well, I still call him boss man, and all we've done here at CNU is we've just swapped offices. Steve's still very much around. He was sitting on the other sideline. I think if he made his way over, we'd put a chair up for him. He'd be ready to go and sit on the sideline with us again.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Steve Shaw. He was the head coach at Christopher Newport for 23 seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he won his butt off. I'm pretty sure no one's ever gonna. He started at William and Mary. That was his first college gig. Played college soccer in Kentucky, and he also played professionally down in South America. And where in America were you? What teams?
I played for a senior cup team called the Kentucky Kickers when I lived and taught in Berea, Kentucky, back in probably 1978, 980, when there were no professional leagues in the United States. So that was probably one of the premier leagues. There were a lot of professional guys. Some college kids played. And really, it was a pretty good level, even back then.
Yeah. But Steve is still here, and he'll pop his head in when we're watching some film. And, here we are talking about recruiting. I've actually asked him numerous times to hop in the car with us and come down to Raleigh or some big event, stay overnight. I promised him food and a 6-pack of Sam Adams, in the hotel, and we're gonna get him. We're gonna get him soon. I'm banking on this winter, dragging Steve on the road with me again. Some of my favorite moments in this job have been, just sitting in the car with Steve for 4 or 5, 6 hour drive, just sharing stories and laughs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're pretty fortunate to have like a mentor who's still around, and someone who's taught you so much, and that you played for as well. So
it really was so valuable. Like we're all young kids that think that we can do it right away. We're talking about his assistant that had himself a moment. We've all been there, but the value that Steve gave me throughout the process was incredible. He didn't handcuff me or anything. He let me let me go and let me do my thing at the same time. And he saw things that he liked, saw things he wanted to help me with, and still today he does it. I'm very, very fortunate, very lucky with that.
Yeah. All right. So what do you want to get into first?
Well, I'll tell you, we're talking recruiting. This might have been in Fredericksburg as well. And I'm on one field, and this is one of my favorite stories for recruiting ever. I think about it all the time when I go recruiting. I'm on one field, and Steve's on the field behind me. And both have 4 teams total that none of us have seen before. They're all good teams. We hadn't started our work on them yet. And I think they were all juniors. So this is in the spring. And I'm on one field, Steve's on the other. We get about 25, 30 minutes into the game, and I hear Steve yelling at me like he's coming up. He needs to tell me something. He's walking up. As he's walking up, so the walk from one field to the other, we're talking 30, 40 yards. He comes up to me. I don't even know what he told me because I was only focused on what he told me afterwards. So he tells me whatever he needs to tell me. And as he's turning around, he goes, hey, number 8. Number 8's the kid you need to recruit. I'm like, what? Where'd this come from? He just walks off. He just leaves. He goes back to his game. I'm like, what is he talking about? And so I'm turning, I'm looking, and I'm watching. And now I can not watch anything except that's number 8. And within 3 minutes, I'm like, oh, it's the best player on the field. Like, it's not even close. And, I don't want to say the name. He's actually a kid who played locally and was a D1 kid on scholarship. And I was really bummed when they took him because we were kind of hoping we'd steal him. Fantastic player, but Steve was able to walk up to the field and see something right away. And I was hoping you can kind of jump into some of the things that you see physically. A kid does something physically. It wasn't like he took a great touch and played. I think all he did was jump. Like that might have been the biggest thing that he saw in that moment. So I was hoping maybe you can kind of give us some insight on exactly what you see when you walk up to a field and you might see a kid, and maybe these 2 or 3 traits really jump out at you, and it kind of puts your focus on how can I get this kid, and let's see if he's a good player on top of it.
Well, before I guess maybe come off as somebody that knows a lot about recruiting, I'll tell you my funniest story about recruiting, which is going to make me look kind of bad, but it's kind of funny, so I think I have to include it. And so there was this one kid, it was March, and the coach's son was already playing for me at CNU. So I went to this, it was only a 7-a-side tournament. And the guy comes running up to me, he says, Coach, you got to look at this kid. He just got back from England. He's been over there for a few years. Nobody knows the kid. And it's already March. I think you could get this kid, and he's really good. Well, it started to snow. And it was windy, and, it was kind of like sleet, snow kind of stuff. So I go up to the field, and I start watching him, and I'm like, man, this kid's pretty good. So I call the coach, and I say, all right, I'm going to take him. And so the kid comes, and he comes to school. And I said, who are you? And he says his name and everything. And I'm like, okay. So what happened was I was watching the wrong kid. And so my assistant coaches never let me live that down. They said, Steve, what were you thinking when I said, man, it was snowing. That's all I can tell you. It's like my only out here. And the kid only lasted a year, I tried to make him into like a ball boy and, a manager and stuff, but it didn't work. And he was always wondering why he wasn't playing, and I had to tell him, that he just was a terrible player, but That was my worst recruiting outing in my career. But to answer or to talk to Cheese's, question about finding players, I think every coach has something that he or she looks for in a player. And to me, I think the greatest thing that I look for is attitude. And it's not like, is he a nice guy or is he a nasty person or whatever. It's, what is your on the field playing soccer attitude, which is something that I want in a player if he's going to have impact on the game. And so when I walk up to a field and I see a kid, taking the bull by the horns, a kid that really gets stuck in, a kid that's really aggressive in a good way, I want to watch that person more. I got to tell you, I got toward the end of my career, I think I got kind of tired of watching run-of-the-mill teams and players. Everybody was playing the same way. And it was like you could predict everything that was going to happen. And most of the times, nothing happened. And so to try to pick out players, you wanted to see someone that could do something well. And it wasn't just not making mistakes. It was like, oh, how is this kid going to help win a game against a good team? And so I think that was my biggest, number on the watch list, when I was recruiting players. And it didn't matter what position they played. I thought everybody had a place to play on the team, if they had that good attitude. But I'd say that was my number one thing.
Steve, do you think that, like you mentioned towards the end of your career, it got more run of the mill? I mean, do you think that like kids, and I don't know if it's always been the case or not, but are they kind of afraid to make mistakes so they don't get stuck in as much? They don't express themselves with the ball as much, that maybe socially they don't want to go past the boundary to be a leader and that sort of thing. Have you seen that more, or am I barking up the wrong tree there?
No, I think you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm a perfectionist. I was a perfectionist when I was a player. I'm a perfectionist as a professor. And so my little teams that I coach, and I've always coached, I say, look, let it go, have some fun. And I ask this question all the time. What is the most fun you can have playing the game of soccer? And most people say, well, winning, and I say, no. I say winning is a byproduct. Development, okay, it leads to winning, but it's having fun. And you have fun because you're good. Nobody wants to do anything in life that they're not good at.
Right.
If you're good at something, and I was at camp this past summer, and I asked that question. I think the kids were in high school, or maybe ninth grade. And I says, well, what are you good at? He says, Coach, I got mad skills playing video games. Mad skills.
Yeah.
I said, so tell me, do you like to play video games? He says, man, I love it. I could play for hours without stopping. I said, okay, everybody, did you hear that? He just proved me right. You want to spend time, you'll never burn out because you love it. There are a lot of parents that say, I don't want him to burn out. I said, I'll tell you what, if he gets good enough, he'll never burn out because he's never going to want to walk off the field.
Right.
And so, to me, kids are worried about making a mistake. I said, look, if you don't make any mistakes, you're not doing anything. Because in order to be great, you're going to have to try to do different things. And so I think I think you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I watch big games in the World Cup and stuff, in the preliminary rounds, and they're not, they're just not trying to lose. And so it's a boring game on the world stage. When I was a coach, and high school coach, college coach, I said, you know what, I'm just going to tell you, I'm coming to get you. You're going to have to stop me. And that was the way I was as a player. And, I'm not going to say I was a fantastic player or anything like that, but I got some things done. And I think it was my attitude. And it's coaches have said, well, what is your game plan and everything? I said, my game plan is to come and get you. You're going to have to stop us. Okay? That's my game plan. And, as she said, we were successful here. We were successful at William and Mary, and I tried to impose my attitude a little bit, on that program when I was there as an assistant. And I think, as I said, that's one of the most valuable traits that a person can have. It's like, come on, you're going to have to stop me.
I think you're onto something, though. I think it's changing a little bit towards the better, Scott. So I remember for a solid, it might be a full decade, everybody you could walk up to a field and both teams were playing a 4-3-3. Both teams were very, very, very possession minded. Both teams were celebrating their center mids going sideways or backwards, like, oh man, no turnovers. And it's pretty boring to watch. And that's not going to translate to the college game really at all. And I think you're starting to see, I've heard people I had a conversation with someone the other day talking about the tactical revolution, where it seems like a lot of people are trying to create something new. Like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I blame Barcelona for all this because of how successful they were and how great they were. And everybody just kept saying Barca ball. And we'd go to the convention and every practice session was like, oh, Barca ball. It's like, all right, I guess we're all Barcelona now. I don't have Iniesta and these guys on my team. So I think maybe we should try something new. And I think that now you're starting to see those actions come into play. I go watch a game now. The top teams, they're not vanilla at all. They're trying different things. They're attacking different ways. I'm seeing players in certain positions that I used to see, big, demanding type players in positions where it used to be just the safest guy. And so I think it's starting to change a little bit. I know if you go watch Steve's club team play when they're U17, U18, you will not see whatever is the most common thing to do now. He's going to be coaching them hard, and the expectation will be, to be great. And you can see it like, oh, that can translate to the next level. I'll use center mids for an example. I'll go watch center mids play, and it blows my mind how much time and space they have. I mean, it absolutely blows my mind. Some of these kids like, oh, this is my best player, and I'll go watch him play, and I'm like, he's in a 20 or 30-yard box with no pressure at all. Like, I could still play today in that box. I mean, I'd be one of the best players in the country if you gave me 30 yards to work with. And then the kid comes to me and he's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? I can't get on the ball. It's like, yeah, because you've got guys that are completely trying to take you away, and this is why you haven't been able to develop much. And I'm not blaming club coaches or anything like that. I just think that that's something that I've seen so many times. And once we get them, we have to, show them it's so much different. The pressure's so much different at the next level. And I'm hoping that it continues that trend. And I'll go watch some of the bigger events, and you'll see some great games. Like, oh man, these kids are trying a certain thing, or they may see that they're in a different type of game where they have to counter really heavy, or they've got a competitive advantage on the left side, so they're trying to attack that side the most. So it's good to really see that starting to change a little bit in the direction. So I'm hoping that that's the trend, and I hope that continues.
Well, I think if you watch the teams that are really good, they accommodate the best players that they have. And so for someone to say, and I wanted to coach a 4-4-2, most of my career, but it was not, there were people that came up to me and said, hey, Steve, what are you doing? What are you playing? What is your scheme? how are you setting up your players? I said, I'm setting up my players according to what they can do. And so everybody says, well, he's playing a sweeper or something. I said, no, we're not playing with a sweeper. We're playing with two center backs that are in different positions according to the things that they do well. Well, I think you're playing a 3-5-2. Well, we're not playing a 3-5-2. It's just that we're going to attack through that center back because he's so good with the ball. And so I don't want to waste him just standing there playing one-on-one. And, so I think even in the best teams of the world, you look at the great players, you say, well, what position do they play? And it's interesting when they put it up on the wall before the game. Well, this is the way that they're going to be positioned. And there are so many different, 4-4-2, 3-5-2. Okay, we're going to play a 3-2-3, and they're like, hey, I got to add up these numbers, I don't know if it comes out to 11 or not, with all the stuff that they're doing. But I think that's when I say I want someone with attitude, everybody is different. And now I'm coaching 9-year-olds and 11-year-olds and stuff. And I'm like, look, don't be afraid to take people on and be exciting out there. And if you make a mistake, so what? I would have to say, and I said this to somebody not long ago, I said, when I coached at CNU, many times we were in the top 5 of scoring goals in the nation in Division III. And I said, people want to come and watch a game like that. Now, I never won a national championship, but we scored a lot of goals. We won a lot of championships, and we were exciting. We were also in the top 5 in attendance. So people want to come and they want to watch those type of teams play. And they're like, I gotta go see this because they're exciting. They're not pros, but they're exciting. And so I hope that that's the way the game is going. If you ever watch one of my teams, that's what you'll see. Win or lose.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, other than the goalkeeper position, we're probably going to have to change you when you come to college in some capacity, whether it's completely move your position, like, I liked you at the, one of the common ones now is you'll take a 6 and you move them to outside back or something. You'll see these types of movements all the time. Maybe the big center back is the only one where, like, you're for sure going to play that, or the big center forward. But almost all of them have to have some sort of adjustment. They're going to come into a completely different environment. You're 18 years old walking into an environment as a little kid, basically, against grown men that have been doing it for years now and been in the weight room and done the food thing and traveled and already, gotten beat up on the soccer field by these older guys before. And, one of the best questions I'm getting nowadays from recruits is they're asking, what advice do you have? And it's the same every time. And, you were talking to the Hampton City kid after our scrimmage, and it was perfect advice. It was just talking about get with the college guys as soon as you can. The kid I talked to last night was from, he's a junior from Northern Virginia. And I said, man, you're in Northern Virginia. You know how many college kids are up in Northern Virginia? All right, this summer you should be getting together with them. There are 20 from your club right now. Go get together with them, and you should play every single day with those college kids and just get used to it now. You're going to get beat up. It's going to be too fast for you, and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect what you need to do. And you're going to adjust because you're a good player. You're going to adjust. You're going to start playing faster. You're going to start using your body properly. I mean, I've got one of my best players here as a freshman. He's just elegant. He can do certain things that other guys on the team can't do, but he plays really, really tall. He's long, he's lean, he plays really tall. And then my older guys are just push, just a little nudge here, nothing illegal, but it's so much that throws him off. And I've already seen him start to, like, change his body, lower his center of gravity, lean into it a little bit more. He's already starting to do it, but I tell him all the time, like, imagine if you were doing this all summer. Imagine if you had done this a year ago where you were learning this stuff and I didn't have to. We were a month into the season already. It's like, man, why didn't I wish we could have got a head start. This freshman could be, already taken off for us. So, that's the Hampton City kid was spot on. I'm glad he said that.
Yeah, there was, I had 2 women's players, Brianna Bem and Sophie Fox, who went to D1 programs. And they said it was just as simple as we weren't kicking the ball hard enough when we got to campus. It was just, I had to kick the ball, be so much firmer with the ball than I was used to. So
Yeah.
it's just a big adjustment in a lot of different ways. So, Steve, you're talking about like moving in and out of different formations, and how do you evaluate a kid on kind of his tactical awareness and being able to adjust, and when you're watching a kid play, or is that something that you can kind of teach as you have them in your program?
Well, I think coaches would like to think they could teach it, but I think it really is something inside. I'm going to say something that Manny Shellshite, who used to coach at Columbia, I admired him, for what he accomplished in soccer for the country, really. And he was a friend of Al Albert's. He said, I hope it was him. I'm going to quote him to a point here. He said, I watch these kids, they've been playing defense for 10 years. And then they go for some of these other teams and I say, I'm going to make you into a winger or a forward, or I'm going to take you center midfield. You're good with the ball. I want guys in the back to be able to play the ball. So I'm going to put you at defense now. And he used to say, when you're playing for 10 years, you've seen thousands of situations from that position. I can tell, first of all, when they're 10 years old, is this the position for that person? Is this person courageous? If you throw the ball out, where does he go? You stand off and watch. And that person has a personality and has the skill, has the body, has the desire or whatever to play certain, positions. And so I think that when you look at a kid and you get to know a kid, yeah, I think there's some variation. You can move him around and he could play more than one position and everything. But I think people are made, for positions. When I was a player, I was an outside player and I played in the midfield. And I loved to score goals, but I didn't ever want anybody to beat me either. So I could defend. In fact, on the senior cup team that I played at, I played left back at the beginning of the season before the kid from Brazil got back. And then I moved up in front of him, and then that was my position. But I never want anybody to beat me. But that was a part of my character, or I don't know what you call it, personality. And so I think that's, like I said before, that's part of figuring out what kind of a scheme you want to play. I was coaching a young team who went to the Nationals a couple of years ago, and I wanted them to play a certain way, but they couldn't do it. And it was probably because of the complexion of the team. What the makeup of the team was, it wasn't working. And I created this positioning, or, whatever you want to call it there, scheme, I like to call it, that I had never coached before. And I said, okay, I'm going to put these players in these positions because this is where they're good and they can help us win. And, at the end of the 3 years that I had them, it turned out that we were a pretty good team. And so I think it was just figuring out, how can I be successful? What is hurting us? How can teams hurt us? And then at the end, like I said, we were a pretty good team. And I think I had the players in a good place. I went up and watched the team play, and another coach that took the team felt like some of the players should play at different positions. And I thought that was interesting. And I'm not going to say whether they were more or less successful, but I think that it's something that you have to look at. I mean, I would love to talk to the different coaches. For example, after I left, let me talk to that coach and see what he was thinking, so maybe I could learn something, and was he successful? And what did he see in players? And so this is, when we were talking about recruiting, It's like, well, what do you see in that player? And I talk about attitude, but we coached. We went to see one player, and he was a center midfield. I think Cheese probably is going to know. He went to another college it was pretty good college, and he played. And he said, that coach really loves that kid. And I said, I haven't seen that kid lose the ball yet, but you know what? He hasn't gone forward yet. He has not passed the ball forward. He passes the ball sideways and back. And he played in college and really did nothing. We played against him, and I'm like, I'm not worried about that guy. And so, when you look at a player and you say, well, what does he bring to the table? What does he bring to the table? And if you look at baseball as a good example, everybody's different. I look at some of those guys and I'm like, man, that fat guy is like playing professional baseball. And he hits 40 home runs,
Yeah.
And he plays first base. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what he does. Mm-hmm. And that's how, you win. When you put together a bunch of different personalities and types of players and you make it work. And every year or every few years, as you add and you lose players, you get a different look.
Yep.
But the attitude is the same.
Yeah. I mean, I want to go back to something you were talking about a little bit ago. And you're talking about making mistakes. And, you're a perfectionist, but you know that mistakes are going to happen. And, talk about, the reaction that you're looking for after a kid makes a mistake. Like, what do they do? What are you looking for that they do? What behavior do they exhibit once a mistake is made? And, what's their next step that is going to be a plus or a minus for you?
Well, I think you have to look for someone that owns the mistake but doesn't come, unraveled. I don't like it when someone puts their hands on their head. I don't like it when someone just swears, out loud. They have to understand what making a mistake is all about. And I tell them, I say, look, I want you to go, when I'm coaching a team, I say, I want everyone to go 100 miles an hour right now. Everybody looks at me and he says, that's unrealistic. I say, okay, so if you're making too many mistakes going 100 miles an hour, then I want you to back it off to about 95. And they say, Coach, that's still unrealistic. I said, well, you're going to try it, first of all. And I said, well, now go down to 90. He said, well, I'm not making very many mistakes. I will go on up to 92 now. So they learn that making mistakes is not really a bad thing unless you make the same mistake, 5 times in a row, or unless it hurts the game. But it only takes a few really good things in a game to win the game. But you're not going to do it going 75 miles an hour. You have to do it going, I don't know if I can say this, balls to the wall. You have to take the bull by the horns. You have to get after people. And so once you learn as a player that that's just a part of the game if you want to be great, then I think, they learn. Little kids now, they lose, they cry. They fall down, they cry. And a good friend of mine from Ashland, who went to Africa with me this past summer, was telling me about coaching little kids. And I said, this is like the best thing I've ever heard. The kid's down there, he's crying, and he walks up and he puts his hands on his hip and he looks at him and he says, do I have to call the helicopter? Do you want me to call the helicopter so they could come and take you to the hospital? Is it that bad? I said, this is like the most awesome thing I've ever heard. And so I'm like, look, don't cry around me unless you broke your leg. I don't care how old you are. Don't cry. Get up and get back in the race. And so I think you have to teach people that way, I was thinking about this morning. For a while there, we decided we're going to have a word for the year for our season.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the guys that played for me, who lives in New York and works in New York, okay, he's a finance guy. And he says, all right, coach, I got a word for you. Equanimity. Equanimity. So I told all the guys we're going to have a new word. And I said, anybody know what that word means? And nobody raised their hand. So I said, okay, equanimity is the composure or the mind that you have when adversity hits you in life. But I'm talking about on the field. So something bad is happening. How are you going to handle it? And so I think that can be taught, mostly by encouragement. Once in a while, you got to embarrass people. But, these are things that need to be taught. And I think the way they handle, I love it when in the pros, especially England, this big defender will just knock the crap out of somebody. The guy makes the call, even maybe gives him a card. The guy just, shakes it off and goes back and plays. He doesn't argue. He doesn't do anything. He just part of the game. And I love that, because that's the attitude that people should have. Hey, you fouled the guy. Get back in the game.
Right.
Or, hey, he kicked you. Yeah, he's going to kick you again, too, because you don't want to pass the ball. Tell them the straight truth, and then hopefully they grow through this encouragement and, coaching. And then hopefully they have the right attitude and the right skill and tactics, to be great.
Yeah, when it comes to recruiting, if I'm out there at a field and I see a mistake, that's fine. It's the reaction is everything, to your point. And I have seen some really poor reactions that lead to me being like, I can't recruit this kid. And most of the time, it's just they shut down. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you don't want a kid to go crazy and go foul a kid or cry or do all stuff. But that's not usually what you don't see. Usually what you'll see is a kid who doesn't have good reactions to a mistake completely changed because of the mistake. He shuts down. He's not the same player. You'll see the coach has to yank him off and talk to him. And I got to be honest with you, I don't have time for that. We have a kid right here, right now that's doing this a little bit. And I've recruited him pretty heavy. I love the kid. I've got big plans for this kid. But he made a mistake recently, and you would have thought that I just cut him. I mean, he just wasn't handling it well. And to the kid's point, he's working on it, and he admitted it. He accepted it, and he's doing great. Since then, he learned a big lesson there. But that's one of those things that'll keep me from recruiting you. If you're already here and I just hadn't seen it yet, and I'm like, oh, wow, I missed that in the recruiting process, it's going to keep me from playing you. I'm sure it's not going to yank you right off the field after I notice it immediately. Even in training, if I notice it, I'm just going to take you off the field. I mean, it's just going to affect the rest of the day, the rest of the training, your teammates in that exercise. And, so to think that nobody's going to make a mistake is ridiculous. Obviously, certain positions, there's a little more freedom there. You talked about earlier, kind of, can you tell what a kid is and personalities and stuff? And I use my two oldest kids, for example. I've got one that's pretty calm, pretty reserved, perfectionist. You'll see him setting up his toy cars. He's 5. He sets up his toy cars and everything's got to be meticulous and perfect. I'm like, yeah, he's going to be a defender or a 6. He's got that mindset. Meanwhile, my daughter, my 3-year-old, she's all over the place. Just crazy, but she just gets the job done. It looks ugly, but she gets the job done. And I'm like, she's going to score a lot of goals. I got a feeling they're going to have a hard time dealing with this crazy girl on the field. And so, right. But to both of their credits, my oldest one, when he makes a mistake, we are working with him on that. It's like, hey man, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Now move on. Here at CNU, we call it flush it. You'll hear me yelling on the field, flush it. You can tell that it's something that they're bothered by. Just flush it, move on. A lot of times it has to do with the referee, making a call they don't agree with. And I don't want them to get distracted. I want them to move on, like Shaw was saying here. You would hope that every kid, when you go watch them play, I want to see the mistakes. I want to see them playing against really good competition and see how they handle it, see how they react to getting scored on, see how they react to going down a goal. It's like our second game of the season, fantastic Lynchburg team. We went down a goal, 20 minutes in. And I actually was a little worried the first minute. I was like, I saw some heads go down. There's 70 minutes left. I saw some heads go down. I saw them react quickly, though. It took them a minute or two, and they got back to it. But I'm hoping that we learned more from that going down 1-0 than we did the rest of the game, because we learned that we can come back. We can win these games, and it's okay. Flush it and move on.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one short story. My first year of coaching, I was in Kentucky, and we had girls on the team. They didn't have that many players. We were one of the smallest schools in the state. There was only one league. And we had a game against the state champions, and we lost 10-0. Okay. Yeah, 10-0. Well, I think it was either 1 or 2 years later, we played them in I think it was the regional final. And they came out and they scored first. And I was just like starting to go down, you know what I mean? And I'm like, golly, not again, And so actually we came back and we won the game 3-1. And so I was talking to the one kid, he was the captain. And I said, Tim, what did you think of the game? He says, Coach, when they scored that first game, the only thing I could think about was, there goes the shutout. And I just shook my head thinking, here I am, the seasoned coach and player. And I'm like, oh, gosh, we're not going to be able to beat these guys again. And he was just worried about the shutout because he knew we were going to win. And we won the game and went on to the state, finals, semifinals in the state. But, it's an attitude. That guy is a winner. Now, I haven't seen him for many, many years. And I'll bet he's just doing great in life because he had that point of view, that attitude about life and success, that he's a winner. I know he's probably still a winner. So
he was on the team that lost 10-0?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that, of course, there are many, many funny stories. I sat next to Gordon Bradley, for hours, and he was telling stories that were another level, when he coached the Cosmos. We all have these little stories, that we could probably go on with for years. I was still playing at the time, and this kid was my goalkeeper. And he said, it was my first year there too, so I was only about 27. No, I was 20, about 26 or 27. So he says, come on, coach, hit a couple of real hard ones on me. I said, okay. So I hit the first one and broke his wrist. And it probably wasn't even that hard, but he probably just caught it wrong. He was my only goalkeeper. I had to go into the PE classes and get some kids to play goal. And so, and to tell you, the first one that I got, you talk about recruiting, like I gotta, I'm good at picking out people, So I go and I get this one kid, and we're playing his first game. I tried to teach him all I could the first week, and then, okay, it's game time. And so we had a penalty called against us. And so I'm like, oh, geez, So the guy's about ready to take the penalty, and then the referee blows the whistle. The goalkeeper that I picked up, he ran off the line towards the ball before the guy kicked it. He felt like that was the only way he was going to be able to stop it. And I just went, oh, my God, that's something I didn't teach him yet, But he didn't. I went into the class the next day and I got another one, but that's part of coaching, I guess.
Yeah. Especially back then, right? I mean, especially back then, when
Yeah.
it's yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cheese, you were going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to build off of his winner comment. I mean, you go recruiting, and we're all looking for big, strong, athletic, just monsters, scoring all the goals or whatever. We're all looking for that kid. But when you use the word winner and you see this kid and he's just doing literally whatever it takes to win that game, win that battle, win that individual situation, that really bumps the kid up the ladder very, very quickly. I mean, it's so tough now to recruit. I mean, just the state of Virginia alone, there's probably 100 kids I'd love to have. How do I only pick 8 of those 100 kids? You have to find these little things that separate them. And we had a play day on campus right before the season started, and I was asking the coach about a kid. I said, I really like this kid. Checked off a bunch of the boxes. I'd just seen him. First time I'd seen him. And the coach said to him, he goes, yeah, let me tell you our record with him and our record without him. And he goes, it's embarrassing without him. When he's not on the field, we can't win. We still know how to win. But when he's on the field, we win most of the time, not all the time. And I mean, that's such a big game changer for us. I mean, that is an attitude, that's a mindset, that's something that you just put that in the locker room, and it feeds, other guys feed off of it, and you start watching a little bit carefully, and you're like, yeah, this kid is a flat out winner, and it's just whatever it takes. His team is just okay, and they won both their games that day. I mean, it was awesome to watch, and I got on the phone with him pretty quickly, and the kid's a good player, and I mean, it's such an important trait. That's a really good way to separate yourself out.
Well, and that attitude turns other kids into winners, like you said. I mean, it builds, sure. And it may not always be about record. It's just about attitude, right? I mean, it's really crucial. Steve, talk about some of the trips that you've taken, and with soccer as the focus, but you were, Africa. You were just there last summer. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so just talk about, what that's all about, and kind of like, such a difference in cultures, but soccer's there as the common ground, and how, but just talk about it. I don't really have a question other than you just talking about what you were up to.
Well, this past May, I got the chance to go to Ghana, and we were in the capital, Accra is the name of the city. And a friend of mine whose kid I coached, who was killed in an accident, had this project over there, and he would send shoes and shirts and everything to the kids, because most of this one program was called the Maranatha Soccer Club. They were almost all orphans. And so there are half a dozen. So this guy came up to me, and it was last December, and he said, hey, I need you to go to Africa with me. These half a dozen guys have taken on this project with these orphans, like 200 kids. And they're trying to teach them how to play soccer, and they show up every day, play from 4:30 to dark. And they need someone that can teach them to teach the kids. And I just thought about you, and I wanted you to, I know that you're a traveler, and I wanted you to come with me if you can do it. So I went in May, and you could go on YouTube and find the video that I made over there, they made of me speaking. And I tell people it's the worst field I've ever seen. And I've played soccer inside of a crater, not the bottom one, but the crater of a volcano. I mean, I've played in a lot of fields. This was the worst. There were big gullies, rocks, glass, all kinds of stuff. There was a burning pit at one end there where there was smoke all over the field. And so I got the chance I showed up, and the head guy, who was probably about 40 years old, came up to me. He says, I'm going to give you a team. And in 3 days, I want you to coach it and play in a tournament. I said, okay. So they were about 12 years old. And at least that's what they said they were. Anyways, they were so happy, these kids. They had nothing. They had nothing in life. And they went to school, and after school, they just came to the field. And so I took them, and there was a coach there too, and we both worked together. And they were great kids, but, that was their life. Their life is to try to get out of that area of the city and do something to take care of their family so that they could have a house and a car and be able to eat all the time. And, I got to tell you, I'm undefeated internationally.
Yeah.
We won all 4 games. And it was amazing there, though. Okay, so when they scored a goal, they were so happy. They came over to the bench. The fans ran on the field after every goal. So one game we won like 6-1, and the fans were on the field 6 times.
Took
I mean, it was amazing.
Finish the game.
Yeah, and in fact, the last game we played, it was dark, and so the pictures I have and on that video, you'll see they're so excited about, and they got this little medal and one little cup for the championship trophy. And you would have thought, that they had won the World Cup. And they wore those medals all week.
Mm-hmm.
So they came to practice, they still had the medal on the next week.
Right.
But, it was about 95 degrees. And, they're all smiling, sweating. They didn't care.
Just grateful to be playing.
Just grateful. And, that's the way it is in most parts of the world, because that's something that they do well. They're winning. It gives them hope. Yep. And when people go over there and show them some love and attention, it just magnifies, their desire, I guess, to be successful in life.
Yeah.
It was the same way in Ethiopia. I went there in 1999 and 2000. And my son Joshua, who played for me here, is a good player. And he and I were doing a demonstration, and I said, okay, now I think we had about 75 to 100 kids there, all ages, when we first got there. And we had 5 balls, I think, for everybody. We had no cones. We used rocks. And I said, okay, now I want you guys to come up. So I need 4 kids. So I picked 4 kids, and they jumped up. They were sitting in the front, and only one of them had shoes. The other 3 had no shoes. Now, I did bring 250 pair of soccer cleats that time. And so before it was all over, everybody had a pair of shoes. Even some of them were too small. The shoes were too small, but they loved the shoes, and they had to have shoes. And so I've been to Africa 3 times. I've been to China 8 times. I've been to Latin America countless times, doing clinics and working with kids. And it just, I'll tell you one story. I was in Honduras. And so the girls wanted to play, and I was coaching the boys. And then I said, okay, girls, at 12 o'clock, I'm going to meet you at the field. I'm going to coach you, just the girls. And I coached them for about an hour, we did some skills, and then we played a little bit and everything. It was really fun. They were about 13 or 14 years old. And then later on in the day, we were at this I guess rec center or whatever you want to call it. It's just a wooden house that everybody met. There was a little field there too. And they all came up to me and they said, Coach, we just want to thank you for spending time with us. Because here nobody really wants us. Nobody cares about us. And we really like playing soccer. And it kind of dug right into my heart, to think that these kids don't have what we have here in the United States. We're distracted with many different opportunities. And so it's not a way of life for most people here like it is, and I said it on that video that I made in May when I was in Africa. I said, if we took our teams from here to the field where they were playing that tournament, people would just say, is this like a joke? This is not a field. Not a blade of grass. Not one blade of grass. Okay. And they play and they never say anything about it. A ball jumps up, off of a rock and hits them in the stomach or, the leg or something like that. And it's like, hey, it's the way it is. Just keep on going.
It's a field, but it's also
and they were great. They were great players, too, because they play 3 hours a day. And they play with the older kids. They got all different ages there. And so I just love going. I have the opportunity to go to Thailand pretty soon to work with a project that they need some assistance on. And I've been asked to go to South Africa and Zimbabwe this year. And they want me to go back to Ghana, and I have a chance to go back to China. And so, I really enjoy giving my time and energy and encouragement, to these kids. And, look at how much we waste here. And I tell people, give me your shoes. You got a new pair of shoes. Give me your old ones. I'm sure they're still good. And we get new uniforms every 2 years. All right, I want all the uniforms. And I need to do a better job collecting. And then when we went to Ghana, we had 8 bags, 52. They were overweight. All right, they were nice to us. They let us take them over 50 pounds, every bag, full of equipment, clothes, shoes. And we took them. We came back with, we left some bags and we put the bags inside the bags, and that's what we brought back. And I told Cheese, I says, I got to have a new shirt because I gave all of mine away. So I don't have any CNU gear anymore. He gave me a sweatshirt so I could wear it to the game the other day, but it was kind of hot.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll have a new shirt for me for the weekend. But anyways, but you want to help these people because they love you for it.
Right.
They appreciate it.
And I guess the lesson for all of us is, be grateful for what we have and don't forget, like, the remarkable thing to me about your interaction with those kids or your observation is that they were having fun. Like, yep. They were playing on an obstacle course basically rather than a field, and they were still like loving it. And and then that goes back to what you were saying earlier, like, have fun. And if you're having fun, you're going to be successful most likely. So just be grateful for the opportunity and all that. So Steve, we need one more story I think it would be a fitting end if we had a good story about cheese, maybe throwing half of them under the bus or something like that. But, just something good and juicy that we can kind of laugh at him about. And
got nothing, man. I don't know what you're talking
about. Well, when Al Albert retired, they had a big roast for him. And I wasn't able to go, but people, said a lot of things, funny things. And so then Al got up there and he said, listen, you guys, I don't want to make you nervous here, but I could tell a lot of stories about you guys to finish this roast off.
Right.
And of course, there was a lot of squirming going on in the chairs, as I saw some of it myself. But, it was funny. And I was just telling my wife this, I think it was yesterday. in our session on the back porch. And so I says, yeah, I was talking to Cheese, and a couple of the guys came up and they started kind of joking on his forehead. And, we always said, Cheese, you got a big head. And he owned up to it, too. He says, yeah, I know, I got a big head. But they were talking about his hairline. And he says, no, my hairline has not receded. I've always had this forehead. I got this big head. And so they were his players, and they know me a little bit, and I said, hey, let me tell you something about Cheese. He was a defender, and he could head the ball. Let me tell you.
Right.
And I said, a lot of times I would think, no, he's not going to get that. And he had that big head, and he would get, I said, no matter where the ball was, he could head the ball. He never missed the ball.
Right.
He always had, and when you teach kids how to head the ball, you say, now look, don't head it on the top. Head it on the forehead. And you got to really go in, you got to break the ball. But he had like a wrecking ball of a head. And that forehead, he was made to be a soccer player.
Yep.
And so he was one of the best headers of the ball. I don't want to get too, I don't want too many of the bad stories, to come out here. Because, it's reciprocal. I don't, sometime they might start telling some stories about me.
Well, yeah, Cheese always made the point when he was, coaching my son, and heading is a choice. But I guess his head didn't really give him a choice. That was
no, it didn't.
Made for him.
You say you think the ball's going to go by, and all of a sudden he's like, and he's got it. Right. So yeah. No, Cheese has been with me. I watched him play when he was 15 years old. Played for Ken Krieger, and we were at Christchurch with the William and Mary camps. And so that's when I met him. And he always used to wear a necklace. I hope he had a cross on it.
Yeah.
Okay? And so he would put that thing, and he'd be playing back there, and he'd have that thing up here like this. So I was coaching him, and I says, look, man, you cannot do that.
Take your shirt out of your mouth.
Take your shirt out of your mouth, okay? You will run faster.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then he went to another school, I think, first, right?
Mason.
George Mason. And I said, look, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you need to be here at CNU. So he came. And that was in 2001?
2001, my first year.
2001. And I retired in 2019. So he was with me for 18 years. He played in all but 1 year when he decided to go to California. I don't know if it was, like that song that had the girls in it and all that. I don't know what it was.
Eagles, right?
But he came back, and was with me. I think we worked together for at least 14 to 16 years as an assistant, and partners in crime, recruiting, coaching. We won a lot together, and, it's been a great, and still is a great relationship. And, I'm glad to be able to still hang out and watch him be successful. So it's been a good run.
Well, I'm hopeful that my 5-year-old is playing soccer now. He's playing a little rec league, and it's interesting you brought up that point. I made the point last night to my wife. Tuck was running, and he put his shirt in his mouth and started playing. And you can ask Liz. I just said this to her last night. She's gonna laugh. And I was like, I can't believe he's doing that. I used to do it all the time, and I'm really hopeful, though, like in the next couple of years, if he likes the game, he wants to do it. He seems to like it and seems to want to get out there and play now. He's pushing his own teammates over and trying to get the ball, and he's figuring it out. Maybe he's a football player, but I'm hoping Steve coaches him one day. I mean, that would be so cool. And your son, we both got to coach your son, Scott, and And I'm hoping Augie gets back to the game when he's all finished up. And, I think it's been pretty good to him. And speaking about shirt in the mouth, how about one of your last guests there, Michael Meese? If he still does it, because he did it late in his career.
Yeah.
I wonder if he does it in college.
I think he probably used to chew holes through his shirt.
Yeah. Well, you get the big neckline after a while.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, you guys both, Steve, Augie was with you first. I mean, it was just such a great start. The way you coached him, it was fantastic. And thank you for taking an interest in him and helping him in his development. And I'm sure he will give back when he's all wrapped up.
Well, and I'll say this is a great thing about coaching. When a person is thankful, a player is thankful, and they come back and they say, thanks, coach. That's a cool thing. Well, when you walk onto the field and they see you and they want to come up and shake your hand, that's them giving back and, telling you that they appreciate you.
Yep.
And even, of course, for your son, I got a chance to teach him Spanish. Which
he needed it. Yeah.
And my initials are going to be at the bottom of that diploma. But anyways, that's a great part of coaching too. You're able to speak into people's lives and influence them in a way that really never ends. I still think about my coaches when I was a kid back in Massachusetts, a long time ago. You never forget those people because they've shown you the encouragement, love, and everything, correction, the discipline, everything that we needed. And we just have to pick up the baton and keep on going.
Yeah.
I think people will be surprised that you're from Massachusetts. I think they would have thought Alabama or something like that. Gentlemen, anything else?
It's the perfect accent to learn different foreign languages. So I stand by that. And I think that's where I got my talent.
Right. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's good. That was a good one. That was fun.
Yeah,
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you. Hold on one sec. I hit stop. Except it's not stop.